Every year, hundreds of divers enter the water and never come back. Some are beginners who underestimate the danger. Others are experts who have done it 100 times before. These are the 20 most dangerous dive sites in the world, and some of them have body counts that will shock you. HMHS Britannic, Greece. The HMHS Britannic is the sister ship of the Titanic. It struck a German mine in the Aegean Sea in November 1916 and sank in less than 55 minutes, killing 30 people when 2 lifeboats were pulled into the ship's still-turning propellers. Today, it rests at 120 meters deep off the Greek island of Kea, nearly 4 times deeper than the recreational diving limit. Reaching the wreck requires closed-circuit rebreather equipment, hypoxic gas mixes, and years of technical training. The bottom time at that depth is brutally short, and any error during the ascent can be fatal. In 2019, 2 British technical divers died within 2 days of each other during a Britannic expedition. Their exact cause of death was never confirmed, though high levels of carbon monoxide were later found in both bodies. The Britannic is longer than the Titanic and remarkably well preserved. Its 3 propellers, still intact, are visible at around 110 meters. Jacques Cousteau was the first to dive the wreck in 1976. Fewer people have ever dived the Britannic than have summited K2, and on K2, at least, the mountain doesn't flood your lungs. Samaesan Hole, Thailand. The Samaesan Hole sits in the Gulf of Thailand between Koh Samaesan and Koh Chuang, and it goes straight down to between 85 and 100 meters with almost no warning. Local dive charts mark the area with 2 words: explosives dumping ground. The Thai military used this crater for decades as a disposal site for unused ordnance, and much of it is still down there. Live bombs, rusting torpedoes, and military debris sitting in black water that light barely reaches. The currents here are unpredictable and powerful. They can drag a diver sideways, pull them down past their planned depth, or spin them in a vortex between 45 and 60 meters, where the only reference point is particles flying past a torch beam. The site sits directly beneath a busy commercial shipping lane, meaning tankers and cargo vessels pass overhead while divers decompress below. The first recorded dive to the bottom was made in 1998. The 2 divers who attempted it reported that all of their torches imploded under pressure, and 3 out of 4 dive computers failed permanently during the descent. The site has since been nicknamed the Black Silty Hole of Death by the technical diving community, and it has earned that name. MV Conception Wreck, California, USA. On September 2, 2019, the dive boat MV Conception caught fire and sank off the coast of Santa Cruz Island, California. It was 3 a.m. and 33 passengers and 1 crew member were asleep below deck when the fire broke out. 5 crew members sleeping on the top deck escaped by jumping overboard. Everyone below deck died. It remains the worst maritime disaster in California since 1865. The wreck now sits in around 18 meters of water off Santa Cruz Island and has become a dive site in its own right. The hazards are not just structural. The interior is a collapsed, fire-damaged maze of metal. Visibility inside the wreck is poor, and the emotional weight of the site adds a dimension that technical divers rarely encounter elsewhere. The cause of the fire was never definitively determined. The captain and 3 crew members were later charged with seaman's manslaughter for failing to maintain a proper night watch. The passengers who died ranged in age from 17 to 62. They went to bed expecting to wake up to another dive. None of them did. Dean's Blue Hole, Bahamas. Dean's Blue Hole drops 202 meters straight down off the coast of Long Island in the Bahamas, making it one of the deepest known blue holes on Earth. From above, the water looks calm and impossibly blue. The hole opens at about 30 meters wide at the surface and then expands into a cavern 100 meters across as it descends into darkness. It has been the site of multiple freediving world records and multiple deaths. In November 2013, American freediver Nicholas Mevely died here during the Vertical Blue International competition after attempting a 72-meter no-fins dive. He surfaced after nearly 4 minutes underwater, then lost consciousness and never recovered. It was the first death in the history of international freediving competition. At least 4 deaths have been recorded at Dean's Blue Hole in the 5 years prior to 2013 alone, including a 19-year-old local who vanished while swimming with friends and was never found. The hole descends far beyond any rescue depth. If something goes wrong in the dark below 100 meters, there is no one who can reach you in time. Blood Grotto, Grotto del Sangue, Italy. The Blood Grotto sits along the coastline near Palinuro in southern Italy, part of the Cilento and Vallo di Diano National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its walls are stained deep red from iron minerals that bleed color into the surrounding seawater, giving the cave its name. It looks extraordinary. It has also killed multiple divers. In June 2012, a group of divers entered the cave during what was described as a routine trip. Their guide lost his bearings inside. The divers kicked up silt and sand from the floor, visibility dropped to 0, and panic set in. 4 divers entered a side tunnel looking for the exit and found a dead end instead. Their bodies were recovered by Coast Guard divers hours later. The 4 victims were from Greece, Britain, and Italy. In August 2016, 3 more experienced divers, including 2 diving instructors, disappeared in the underwater caves near Palinuro during a group dive. They are believed to have entered a cave passage at 50 meters that subsequently silted out. Palinuro coastline has now claimed at least 7 diver lives across 2 separate incidents, and the pattern in both cases was the same. The cave looked manageable right up until it wasn't. The Shaft Sinkhole, South Australia. The Shaft Sinkhole sits in the Mount Gambier region of South Australia, an area riddled with underwater cave systems that have claimed more than a dozen diver lives over the decades. The shaft drops to around 98 meters and is known for its near-zero visibility in the lower sections, where fine silt hangs permanently in suspension and a diver's torch barely cuts through it. The cave's name is accurate. It descends like an elevator shaft, narrow and vertical, before opening into a series of lower chambers that have disoriented and trapped experienced divers. The water is cold year-round, and the passages become progressively tighter the deeper you go. At depth, the combination of darkness, cold, and nitrogen narcosis can reduce even trained cave divers to making fatal decisions. The Cave Divers Association of Australia has repeatedly raised the standards required to dive in this region, following a string of fatalities at the shaft and surrounding systems. Despite this, the lure of the cave continues to draw divers in. Several of those who have died here were certified cave divers with hundreds of dives logged. Certification, it turns out, is not the same as safety. Cocos Island, Costa Rica. Cocos Island sits 550 kilometers off the Pacific coast of Costa Rica in open ocean, making it one of the most remote dive destinations on Earth. There is no airport, no hotel, and no hospital. The only way to reach it is by a 36-hour boat crossing across some of the roughest open water in the Pacific. If something goes wrong at Cocos Island, help is very far away. The currents around the island are ferocious and unpredictable. Drift dives are not optional, they are standard. Divers are regularly swept far from the boat and have to be tracked by GPS transponders provided by liveaboard operators. Hammerhead sharks gather here in the hundreds, and tiger sharks patrol the shallower water. In November 2017, a tiger shark attacked and killed a 49-year-old American diver named Rohina Bandari at a popular site called Manuelita, also injuring her instructor. It was the first confirmed fatal shark attack in the park's history. The depth and current at Cocos combine in a way that exhausts tanks faster than on any flatwater dive. Divers have gone missing here and never been found. In one documented case, a diver surfaced away from the boat after being swept by current and could not be located despite a 72-hour search. Only his equipment was later found on a nearby beach. Kilsby Sinkhole, South Australia. Kilsby Sinkhole sits on a privately owned farm in South Australia and drops to around 40 meters through a boot-shaped limestone cavity. The water is famously clear near the surface, some of the best visibility of any freshwater dive in Australia. But the clarity is deceptive. The sinkhole is laced with hidden chambers, narrow passages, and tight restrictions that have confused and killed multiple divers since the 1960s. At least 6 divers have died in Kilsby since 1969. The sinister feature of the site is not its depth. 40 meters is manageable for a trained diver, but its layout. The passages twist and branch in ways that are easy to navigate going in and nearly impossible to follow coming out in low light. Divers who stirred up silt on the way down have returned to find their exit route gone, replaced by a wall of suspended sediment. The Cave Divers Association of Australia tightened access requirements at Kilsby following repeated fatalities. Today, divers must book through approved operators and show proof of appropriate certification. The sinkhole is still accessible, still beautiful, and still dangerous. It sits on a farm in rural South Australia, which makes it all the more surreal that it has a body count. Sha'ab Abu Nuhas, Egypt. Sha'ab Abu Nuhas is a submerged reef in the northern Red Sea that sits directly in the path of the shipping lane leading to the Suez Canal. Captains coming through the Strait of Gubal have been misjudging its position for over 150 years, and the reef has the wrecks to prove it. At least 7 ships have sunk here, earning it the name Ship's Graveyard of the Red Sea. 4 of the wrecks are diveable: the SS Carnatic, the Giannis D, the Crisula K, and the Kimon M. The SS Carnatic sank in 1869 carrying gold and wine. When it broke in half during abandonment, 31 people died waiting on a nearby island for rescue that came too late. The Giannis D hit the reef at full speed in 1983 after the captain went to bed and the first officer lost track of their position. The ship sank in hours. Its hull crumpled across the reef at a depth of 24 meters. The danger for divers today is not the ships themselves, but the conditions around them. Currents in the Strait of Gubal are strong and shift without warning. Penetrating the wrecks means navigating collapsed corridors and razor-sharp rusted metal in low visibility. And somewhere in the debris field, divers are always aware of one thing. This reef has been killing people for a century and a half. It is not finished. Cenote Angelita, Mexico. Cenote Angelita sits on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico and looks from the surface like a tranquil jungle pool. It drops straight down to 60 meters in a sheer-walled limestone shaft. At 30 meters, divers pass through a thick hydrogen sulfide cloud, a layer where fresh water from above meets salt water from below, producing a dense toxic fog that smells of rotten eggs and cuts visibility to almost nothing. Below the cloud, the water becomes pitch dark and the oxygen levels drop. Ancient trees that fell into the cenote centuries ago are preserved perfectly below the cloud, their branches still intact, suspended in water that contains almost no bacteria because nothing alive can survive down there. It creates an image that looks more like a nightmare than an underwater environment. Cenote Angelita is not technically a cave system, which means it lacks the labyrinth hazards of sites like Jacob's Well. But the hydrogen sulfide layer is its own danger. Divers who descend through it too quickly lose all visual reference. Ascending back through the cloud while managing buoyancy, gas, and direction in complete darkness is a skill set that goes beyond standard open water training. The cenote has no documented body count, but the conditions that would produce one are all present. Orda Cave, Russia. Orda Cave sits beneath the western Ural Mountains in Russia and stretches for more than 4,600 meters of mapped passageways, making it one of the longest underwater caves on Earth. The rock is gypsum crystal, and the water is clear enough to see for 40 meters in any direction. It is one of the most visually stunning dive environments in the world. It is also one of the most lethal. The water temperature inside Orda averages 4 degrees Celsius year-round, barely above freezing. Dry suits are mandatory, and even experienced cave divers report struggling with the cold during long dives. The passages are enormous in some sections and brutally tight in others, with sharp gypsum walls that can shred equipment and cut skin. Navigation errors inside a cave system of this size are almost impossible to correct without a pre-laid guideline. Dozens of divers have died inside Orda Cave. The Underwater Speleology Center that manages the site requires formal requests and proof of certification before any diver is permitted to enter. The Russians who know this cave best speak about it with the kind of respect that makes clear they consider it alive. One local legend describes a spirit called the Lady of the Cave, a figure in white said to guide divers safely through. The ones she couldn't save are still down there. SS Yongala, Australia. The SS Yongala was a passenger ship that sank in a cyclone off the coast of Queensland, Australia in March 1911. All 122 people on board died. The wreck was not discovered until 1958, and for years after that, it sat largely undisturbed. Today it rests at between 15 and 29 meters deep off Cape Bowling Green, and it has become one of the most biologically rich dive sites on Earth. Bull sharks circle the wreck constantly. Massive grouper, giant moray eels, manta rays, and enormous schools of barracuda have made the Yongala their permanent home. The wreck is the only reef structure for miles in any direction, making it a magnet for marine life of every kind. The abundance of predators is part of the appeal and part of the danger. The currents around the Yongala are strong and shift rapidly. Divers are regularly swept away from the wreck before they can begin their ascent. The depth, the sharks, the current, and the sheer volume of life around the site make it demanding even for experienced divers. Dive operators will cancel trips on short notice if conditions are unfavorable. And conditions around a 100-year-old wreck in open Queensland water are unfavorable more often than most divers expect. Great Blue Hole, Belize. The Great Blue Hole sits at the center of Lighthouse Reef, about 70 kilometers off the coast of Belize. It is 300 meters across and drops to 125 meters, a perfectly circular shaft of deep blue water surrounded by shallow turquoise reef. Jacques Cousteau named it one of the top dive sites in the world in 1971. In 2018, a team of researchers exploring the bottom found two bodies. The danger of the Great Blue Hole is not immediately obvious. The water is calm. The walls are covered in stalactites. At around 40 meters, nitrogen narcosis begins to take hold, and the pull to go deeper is stronger than it should be. Divers have descended past their planned depth, chasing the feeling, and some have not come back up. The two divers found in 2018 had been missing for an unknown period of time before they were discovered near the bottom. Their tanks were empty. The team that found them left them in place, as recovering bodies from 125 meters is not a realistic operation. The Great Blue Hole is beautiful, well known, and genuinely dangerous. The combination is exactly what makes it so deadly. Cenote Esqueleto, Temple of Doom, Mexico. Cenote Esqueleto sits near Tulum on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and is known by two names: its official name, which translates to Skeleton Cenote, and its common name, the Temple of Doom. There is a skull and crossbones painted at the underwater entrance to the tunnel system. This is not for decoration. Divers have died in here. The cenote is filled with a network of cave passages that get progressively darker as they extend away from the entrance. Sunlight only penetrates the first section. Beyond that, the dive is entirely dependent on artificial lighting. A failed dive light in the Temple of Doom is a life-threatening event. The passages are tight, the currents unpredictable, and the silt on the floor rises at the slightest disturbance. In 1995, at least 3 divers died here after pushing past the boundary markers, exhausting their air before reaching the surface. The site is rated for experienced cave divers only, but enforcement has historically been inconsistent. Guides in the Tulum area have taken uncertified divers into restricted sections. The skull and crossbones at the entrance was not placed there by authorities. It was placed there by cave divers who wanted to be honest about what lies beyond it. Bushman, South Africa. Boesmansgat, known in English as Bushman's Hole, is a freshwater cave in the Northern Cape province of South Africa, sitting at over 1,500 meters above sea level. It reaches a depth of at least 283 meters, making it one of the deepest known freshwater dive sites in the world. Its altitude alone makes it extraordinarily dangerous. The decompression schedule required to dive here safely must account for the equivalent pressure of a dive to 339 meters at sea level. In 1994, a South African diver named Dion Dreyer died inside Boesmansgat at a depth of around 270 meters. His body was too deep to recover. Nearly 10 years later, in 2004, professional diver Dave Shaw attempted a technical recovery dive to bring Dreyer's remains back to the surface. Shaw descended to 272 meters, found the body, and attached a lift bag. On the way up, he died. Dreyer's remains eventually surfaced, but Shaw's body was found wrapped in the same lift bag, at the same depth where Dreyer had been lying for a decade. The record depth dive at Boesmansgat is 282.6 meters, set by Nuno Gomes in 1996. Gomes got stuck in the mud at the bottom for 2 minutes before freeing himself. The dive took 12 hours to complete due to decompression requirements. This is not a recreational dive site. It is a place where the physics of depth will kill you if your preparation is anything less than perfect. Devil's Spring System, Florida, USA. The Devil's Spring System sits northwest of Gainesville, Florida, on the banks of the Santa Fe River. It consists of 3 connected caves, Devil's Eye, Devil's Ear, and Little Devil, which together produce 80 million gallons of water per day and form one of the most dived cave systems on Earth. Jacques Cousteau visited the springs and was amazed by the clarity of the water. That clarity is part of what makes the system so dangerous. It draws divers in far deeper than their training allows. The entrance to Devil's Ear is a canyon-like opening at the junction of the spring system and the Santa Fe River. The current there is so strong, it has been compared to a fire hydrant. Divers who enter without cave certification or guideline experience have been sucked into the system and killed. The passage is narrow without warning, and the combination of current and disorientation has proved fatal for both novice and experienced divers alike. Multiple people have died in the Devil's Spring system over the decades. The springs are still open to the public, and certified cave divers visit regularly. But the system does not forgive mistakes. The caves run for kilometers in every direction from the entry points, and once a diver is inside without a guideline, they are already lost. Chuuk Lagoon, Micronesia. Chuuk Lagoon, formerly known as Truk Atoll, sits in the western Pacific Ocean and served as the main naval base of the Japanese Empire during World War II. In February 1944, American forces launched a surprise attack that sank over 40 ships and 275 aircraft in a single operation. The lagoon became, almost overnight, the largest ship graveyard in the world. Today, those wrecks sit in clear, warm water and attract thousands of divers every year. The danger is not the depth or the currents, it is the cargo. The ships went down fully loaded, with ammunition, depth charges, mines, torpedoes, and military aircraft still carrying their ordnance. 80 years of corrosion have made that cargo unstable. Divers who brush against the wrong surface or disturb the wrong section of a hull risk triggering an explosion. The exact location of all the ordnance is unknown. Several of the larger ships and their cargo have never been found. The deep wrecks also sit well below recreational diving limits, and the penetration dives inside the ships require technical certification. Divers who enter the holds without proper training can find themselves inside a pitch-black corridor of rusting steel, surrounded by decades-old explosives with no clear way back to the surface. Chuuk Lagoon is considered one of the best dive sites in the world. It is also one of the most quietly lethal. Jacob's Well, Texas, USA. Jacob's Well is a natural spring in Wimberley, Texas, and from the surface it looks almost impossibly inviting, a clear pool of blue water set in the Texas hill country. The opening is about 4 meters wide. Below it, the cave system drops through 4 chambers that descend to a recorded depth of around 40 meters. The third chamber has a feature that has killed multiple divers, a false exit. It looks like a way out. It is a dead end. At least 8 divers have died at Jacob's Well since the 1960s, and many more have had near-death experiences. The chambers narrow progressively as divers descend, and one section, known as the birth canal, requires divers to remove their tanks and push them through a gap barely wide enough for a human body. Divers who misjudge their buoyancy in this section have become stuck. The current inside the spring is strong enough to work against a diver's ascent for the entire climb back to the surface. The site is now designated as a Hayes County natural area, and swimming is managed seasonally. Diving requires cave certification. Despite its reputation, Jacob's Well continues to draw people who see the clear blue surface and underestimate what lies beneath it. The spring has been flowing continuously for thousands of years. It is patient. Eagle's Nest Sinkhole, Florida, USA. Eagle's Nest Sinkhole sits inside the Chassahowitzka Wildlife Management Area in west-central Florida, hidden behind an unremarkable surface pond surrounded by cypress trees. There is no dramatic entry, no warning sign visible from the shore. But below the surface, the sinkhole drops through a narrow chimney into a structure that has been called the Mount Everest of cave diving. It descends to 93 meters through a series of massive chambers and tunnels that extend in every direction. Since 1981, at least 13 divers have died here. The deaths have involved experienced cave divers, technical divers with hundreds of logged dives, and people who entered without the correct certification. The causes are consistent: visibility loss from disturbed silt, equipment failure at depth, navigation errors in the tunnels, and running out of air before reaching the surface. At 93 meters, a standard tank is consumed in minutes. Every diver in the Eagle's Nest is managing a countdown. Access today requires advance online registration and a signed liability waiver. Diver certification must be presented before entry. The Eagle's Nest does not turn away divers based on skill assessment, only paperwork. The gap between what paperwork certifies and what this cave demands has been tested many times. In most of those tests, the cave won. Blue Hole, Dahab, Egypt. The Blue Hole sits a few kilometers north of Dahab on Egypt's Sinai coast, a few meters from the shoreline of the Red Sea. It is a submarine sinkhole that drops to 170 meters in its main shaft, and it has been called the Divers' Cemetery. More than 130 confirmed deaths have occurred here. Unofficial estimates put the true number closer to 200. The killing feature of the Blue Hole is not its depth. It is a tunnel called the Arch. The Arch connects the sinkhole to the open Red Sea through a passage whose ceiling sits at 56 meters. Egyptian authorities have banned the use of compressed air below 40 meters. The entrance to the Arch is 16 meters below that limit. At that depth, nitrogen narcosis distorts perception, slows thinking, and creates a false sense of calm. Divers who miss the Arch entrance continue descending. The deeper they go, the less likely any emergency ascent can save them. The bottom of the shaft is beyond any rescue. Guides at the Blue Hole have historically bent the rules, taking divers deeper than their certification allows. The site is accessible on foot from Dahab with no permit required and minimal oversight. It attracts thrill seekers alongside experienced technical divers, and the line between the two is not always enforced. There is a small memorial near the surface, a collection of plaques dedicated to the divers who never came back. New plaques are still being added. There are thousands of dive sites around the world, and the vast majority of them are safe. But the ones on this list exist in a different category. Places where the water itself seems designed to kill you. Some of them are still open today, still accessible, and still adding to their body counts. If you enjoyed this video, click on the video on screen now to enjoy more beyond belief facts.